Maple Creek, New York, was one of those picture-perfect suburbs you often see in movies, where lawns are always green, white fences gleam in the sunlight, and life seems to drift by in serene perfection. But on a crisp autumn morning, October 15, 2022, that peaceful image was shattered by a 911 call. On the other end of the line, Sarah Jenkins' voice trembled with a vague but growing fear. Her best friend, Amelia Hayes, had failed to pick up her 7-year-old son, Leo, as planned. That was entirely out of character for Amelia, a punctual, devoted mother who never strayed far from her phone. Sarah and Amelia had been best friends since college. They shared everything, from study notes and late-night camping trips to heartbreaks and career anxieties. Their bond had only deepened when both became single mothers. The night before, Amelia, a 32-year-old graphic designer, had dropped Leo off at Sarah's house to focus on an urgent project. They had agreed she'd return at 9 a.m. the next morning. But 9 o'clock came and went. Then 10. No call, no message. Sarah's calls went straight to voicemail. An icy dread crept into her chest. Abandoning her half-finished coffee, she grabbed her coat and rushed out the door. Amelia's 2-story house, wrapped in ivy and always meticulously maintained, looked as peaceful as ever. But when Sarah knocked and got no answer, she tried the door, only to find it slightly ajar. A cold draft rushed out to greet her. "Amelia?" she called out, hopeful, but only silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. In the kitchen, a steaming cup of coffee sat beside an unfinished bowl of oatmeal. In the home office, Amelia's laptop glowed with an open design file. It was as if she had stepped out for just a moment and never returned. Her phone, wallet, and keys were gone, but her SUV still sat untouched in the garage. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The police arrived quickly. The case was assigned to Detective David Chen, a calm, sharp-eyed investigator noticing what others missed. From the moment he stepped inside, Chen felt the dissonance. An immaculate, peaceful space wrapped in an almost audible tension. No signs of struggle, no broken objects, no blood. Yet something in the air warned of danger. "A person doesn't just vanish," Chen muttered, his eyes landing on the undisturbed SUV in the garage. "And a mother doesn't leave her child. Not like this." Within hours of the investigation, Detective David Chen assembled his team in the Maple Creek precinct. A large whiteboard was soon filled with names, timelines, and red string. Classic, almost cinematic. 4 faces stood out. Chen referred to them as the 4 doors. 4 lives, 4 secrets. Door 1. Ethan Vance, Amelia's ex-husband. Their marriage had lasted 5 years and ended bitterly. Financial disputes, custody battles, and unresolved resentment defined their final days together. Ethan, a successful businessman, claimed to be in Chicago the night Amelia vanished, but his alibi had holes, particularly between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., when his whereabouts were unconfirmed. Hotel cameras during that window mysteriously lost footage. More disturbingly, an old domestic violence accusation had once been filed against him, later dropped. Chen noted him. Motive, opportunity, and a bruised ego. Door 2. Julian Croft, the eccentric neighbor. An enigmatic sculptor who lived alone at the end of the block, Julian kept to himself and worked odd hours in his studio. Elderly neighbor Mrs. Gable claimed to have seen Julian standing motionless in his yard around the time Amelia went missing, watching her house in eerie stillness. A search of Julian's workshop revealed a haunting sketch of a woman who looked very much like Amelia. He denied knowing her well. but the art suggested otherwise. Door 3. Daniel, the secret lover. Amelia had never mentioned Daniel to Sarah, but co-workers spoke of changes in her behavior. Whispered calls, moments of nervous excitement. Through credit card records, investigators discovered repeated visits to a downtown restaurant with a man named Daniel, an architect, married. He admitted the affair and said he was preparing to leave his wife. But he lacked an alibi for the critical night. No witnesses, no surveillance footage. His texts, restored from Amelia's deleted files, showed growing tension between them over the future of their relationship. Door 4. Mark Renshaw, Amelia's direct manager. At first, Mark appeared clean, cooperative, respected, with a sterling reputation. No one suspected him. But Chen found it peculiar that Amelia's last sent email at 9:48 p.m. on the night she disappeared was addressed to Mark. Attached was a cryptic spreadsheet titled Internal Transfers. A finance team member later revealed that Amelia had quietly questioned suspicious fund movements totaling over $200,000. The recipient: a shell company partially owned by Mark Renshaw. While there was no formal complaint, the implication was clear. Amelia had discovered something. The burner phone, later found under Leo's bed, would only confirm what Chen already suspected. He wrote a note in his leather-bound case log. Mark Renshaw. No known personal motive, but financial threat. If Amelia pushed him, he might have snapped. Chen stood before the board and addressed his team. 4 doors. 3 may lead nowhere, but 1 will open to the truth. As the 3rd day passed with no sign of Amelia, Maple Creek grew colder, not just in weather, but in spirit. Volunteers combed the woods. News vans parked outside homes. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone was a suspect. But the key to unlocking the case came not from the suspects or neighbors, it came from Leo. The boy hadn't spoken since his mother's disappearance. He didn't cry, didn't sleep well, barely ate. But when child psychologist Laurel Quinn gently asked him about his favorite toy, Leo paused. Then, silently, he led her to his bedroom. He pulled out a dusty wooden box from under the bed and opened it. Inside, nestled between old action figures and toy cars, was a cheap, prepaid cell phone. Detectives quickly took possession of the phone. The contents were shocking in their simplicity. Only one contact was saved: MR. The texts were sparse. "We need to talk. Don't call me on this number again." And the last message from Amelia: "You have 24 hours." Chen immediately traced the number. It was registered to Mark Renshaw. Mark was brought in again, this time under suspicion. The moment the phone was placed in front of him, he froze. His posture sagged, his eyes dropped. What followed was a broken, rambling confession. Amelia had discovered his embezzlement scheme. Over $200,000 funneled through fake accounts. She confronted him and demanded he turned himself in. She even offered to wait 24 hours before reporting it to authorities. But Mark panicked. That night, he went to her house, begged her to reconsider. When she refused, he struck her. Once, twice, enough to silence her forever. He cleaned the scene meticulously, removed her phone and keys, and left the SUV behind to create confusion. But before any of that, Amelia, sensing something was wrong, had hidden the burner phone in Leo's toy box. Her final act: planting the seed of truth where only her son could find it. Sometimes, Chen would later say, it isn't forensics or genius that solves a case. It's love. A mother's love. After Mark Renshaw's fragmented confession, the Maple Creek Police Department moved swiftly. He was arrested that same night. A man once admired for his leadership and family values was now escorted away in handcuffs, a fallen figure shrouded in disgrace. With Mark's directions and a pinpointed location on a map, a search team was dispatched to Blackwood State Forest, a remote woodland more than an hour away. Cold wind whipped through the trees as officers and forensic units trudged through the damp underbrush. The air was thick with rot and silence. Then came the bark of a search dog near the base of a sprawling oak. Leaves were disturbed. The soil was soft. When they dug, the sickening truth was unearthed. A body wrapped hastily in plastic sheeting. Amelia Hayes had been found. Detective Chen stood at the edge of the taped-off clearing. He didn't speak. He simply removed his cap and bowed his head. The call to Sarah Jenkins was the hardest one Chen had ever made. She collapsed to the floor upon hearing the words. The sound of her grief echoed through the walls of her home, a sharp and terrible kind of silence. Leo didn't cry. When Sarah wrapped her arms around him, he whispered, "Mommy told me to keep the phone safe. Only give it to someone if something really bad happens." Those words pierced deeper than any confession. Amelia had known. Somewhere in her bones, she sensed the threat looming. And in her final moments, she acted not out of fear, but out of protection. Mark Renshaw stood trial before a packed courtroom. With damning evidence, financial records, the burner phone, his own confession, there was little left for the jury to deliberate. Within hours, the verdict was reached. Guilty of first-degree murder. Life imprisonment without parole. Months later, Chen returned to Amelia's house, now Sarah's and Leo's. He stood in the quiet home office where Amelia once worked late into the night. Through the window, he could see Leo in the backyard playing with a new puppy. He reached into his coat and pulled out a notebook, the same one he had kept throughout the case. On its last page was a single line. It wasn't evidence that solved this. It was a mother's love, buried beneath the silence, waiting to be heard. The wind blew gently outside. In Maple Creek, life would go on. But the story of Amelia Hayes would never be forgotten.